I want to play a game with you guys before we get into some of our questions. This is going to be very interesting because you both have no idea what I'm about to talk about. We didn't talk about this in the pregame. So, yeah, let's so in the United States, different states have a representative of a plant or an animal like a state like the state bird or the state amphibian and stuff like that. So, since we focus on animals like frogs and lizards and carnivorous plants and inverts. Let's play a game. It'll be, I don't even have a name for it yet, but it'll be the best of three. So we'll have a conversation about Pennsylvania and South Carolina. Drew, you're going to represent South Carolina, and we're going to have a conversation. What is this? What do you personally think the state amphibian should be? What do you think the state plant should be? And what do you think the state hypothetical invert should be? Because I don't know that any state has that.
Mhm.
So who wants to start?
Maybe we start with Pennsylvania. We do like a state sandwich.
All right.
Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Okay.
DJ,
All right,
you
which
go
one
first.
Okay. So I think for state amphibian for Pennsylvania, what it should be, and I believe it is, honestly. I could be very wrong, but I think it should be hellbenders just because of their endangered status and a lot of that stuff. But
It's a good choice.
so are we going are we jumping down to Carolina amphibian now and then jumping back?
Yeah, we
Or are we
could.
doing the
we could-
amphibian, or run through all three?
Yeah, let's do just straight amphibian for right now.
Sure. So the representing South Carolina, the state amphibian is the spotted salamander. If I were to pick a state amphibian of my own, I feel like that is a pretty good representer. I would say the spotted salamander is a really gorgeous salamander. I've found them in a couple places around the Clemson area. They're so fun to interact with. They're beautiful. I mean, they have that black kind of undercolor and those big bright yellow and orange spots. They're probably pretty widely distributed relative to a lot of other salamanders in the state. I mean, you think of South Carolina and how in the upstate area it starts to border the Appalachians and the Blue Ridge Mountains specifically. And with that elevation, you get some cool diversity and some unique species. I mentioned the green salamander, which is by and large my favorite salamander. But I think when I pick a state animal, I want something that probably represents the state well. So I'd say that a pretty widespread salamander like the spotted salamander would be a good one. Oh, the other one I might go for is the marbled salamander, because I'd argue they're even cooler. They're really pretty. I just love that black and white striping. I'm probably biased because they're an animal that I'm studying, but they're pretty widely distributed too. Yeah, might have to throw a bid in for the marbled salamander.
Yeah, marbled salamander is cool. So I'm gonna do something very controversial here. I'm gonna say that I would not want the hellbender for any reason to be my state amphibian. There's no, like, for me, there'd be no reason whatsoever, because it's a giant salamander. That's the only thing it has going for it. In our lifetime, how many people in the state of Pennsylvania do you think will see a hellbender? And that's one of the main reasons why amphibians get left behind, because we pick these animals that nobody sees, and maybe they care about because it's a giant salamander, but that's the only reason why they care, because it says it's a giant. What I would actually throw a bid in for is either, and this is going to sound really, really crazy, but I'll explain. I have two potential candidates that I think would be better. The first one I think would be the spring peeper. And the reason why I think the spring peeper would be the best state amphibian for Pennsylvania is that it represents the changing of the seasons. PA is always known as a temperate region, and spring peepers are, for the most part, a temperate species. And everybody's heard one, whether you're a mom or a dad, like going to Walmart, or you're somebody who's going to get a pizza like in the middle of the night. Everybody's heard of spring peeper. There's no way that anybody can deny it in Pennsylvania. They're just abundant. They're probably the most abundant frog in the state, and they do go down south as well. There's a subspecies, the southern spring peeper. But what I will say is the spring peeper, even though it's common and people might think, well, that's a waste of an animal, isn't that what you want though for education? Like, don't you want people to be able to identify an animal rather than say, oh yeah, it's out there somewhere. One day, I'll see it in the zoo. No offense, DJ, but I would make a case for an abundant animal that has a voice, because it would only make sense to me that if we're doing education and we want people to care about the outdoors, if you can't get a face of something, like how the ASPCA does with the dogs, they show the videos and stuff. Well, all right, why not have a voice instead? Like a voice for amphibians, and that would be, in my opinion, the spring peeper. And if I had to throw in an alternative, being like Drew here, I would definitely make the case for my research animal, the northern leopard frog, but for a different reason. It still has a voice, but it's declined in a lot of the state, and they don't actually know what the status is. It's a species of special concern. It was the most abundant frog in the United States at one point, and because of us, it's declined. And uh, it's not even controversial to say that, because of pollution and deforestation. It's a far traveling animal and it can't handle pollution. And it's a cold tolerant animal. It's never been south of Pennsylvania. It's invading Maryland, but it can't go further south because of how warm it gets. So that would make another case. It's one of the most beautiful frogs in the country. It has multiple variants. It could be green, it could be brown, it could have no spots, it could be gold, it can be blue, it can be, of course, there's the pigments where it could be albino or it could be melanistic. But there's so many variables for the northern leopard frog, and it just would be probably the most colorful amphibian out of, except for the marbled and the spotted salamanders. It's probably the most colorful amphibian that we have in the state. So I know a lot of people would hate me. So if this video blows up, I'm gonna get a lot of comments. Aaron, that's not true. Like, that's crap. You suck. But of course I'm gonna pick a frog. But that's my reasoning behind it.